Hey guys, how's it going? Rizmo here and welcome to the Pro League recap, where we'll be discussing everything that happened on day 1 of the MLG Season 3 COD Pro League. We'll be looking at the results from last night, talking in depth about the Optic Gaming vs Envious matchup, giving you a map by map breakdown of that one. We will look at the current standings and we will also see what fixtures have to come on day 2 of the Pro League. So as you can see from the graphic on your screen right now, we had 4 games on the opening night of the Pro League. The first game was Optic Gaming versus Team Envious. We'll get into that a bit more in depth a bit later. That game finished 3-2 to Optic. Followed by that we had Rise versus Epsilon. That game concluding at a score of 3-1 to Rise. It's quite surprising with Rise's new roster that was only formed a couple hours before this match that they managed to take out Epsilon, such a star-studded team full of great slayers, Swanee, Nagafen. But Epsilon only took the one map, which was in Uplink Detroit. But again, it was just a dominant performance from Rise. You had TJ Halley, he had the highest KD of the night out of everybody, it was 1.39, and the highest Slayer rating, which was a 39. It seemed to be the argument with Kill on Twitter that really ignited his passion, his fire. I'm not sure what it was, why Epsilon just didn't perform. Maybe first game nerves, they didn't really know what to expect from the league. You can see that only Nagafen was positive for Epsilon the whole night with a 1.05 KD, which is just really not good enough. And the next game we had an ISO versus Orbit. This time ISO taking this series 3-1. ISO won the Solar Hardpoint, the Uplink Biolab, and the new map in rotation, the Hardpoint Compound. Seemed to be a pretty easy win from the guys over in Isolation Empire, Dido and Burns. Although Facento seemed to be the star last night. He finished the 1.28 KD in the series, only behind TJ, and also he had the second highest actually, Slayer rating. Then the last game of the night was TK versus Denial. Now again, I was really excited to see the Denial roster line up. You know, they have a lot of young guns, really interesting team. TK again. They only formed the roster a couple hours before in that crazy trade with Rise. But Denial managed to squeeze the victory 3-2 in the end. They came back from 2-1 down to eventually win the game. Both Temp and Replays had 1.7, 1.17 and 1.15 KDs respectively, 3rd and 4th overall, best of the night. Denial also had the highest KD team ratio, I believe at 1.11, and again Slasher, the ball player for the team, had the highest S&D KD at a 2.0, which inevitably won them the game 5 S&D to take the series.
So in the first game of the night, Optic Gaming came up against Team Envious. Now in this game I was expecting Optic to pretty much 3-0 Envy. I wasn't expecting much out of this new lineup from Envy. I didn't think that they had got a lot of practice in, you know, Optic just being the absolute powerhouse they've been for pretty much all of Advanced Warfare. I thought this would be a pretty easy 3-0, but that wasn't the case. In the first map was a Detroit Hardpoint, and Optic started very slowly. Envy actually had the stronger beginning to the game. At around the end of the first set of rotations, Envy actually had a 40-point lead over Optic, and it was kind of at this point, the 5th or 6th hill, that Optic started to work together, play as a team, get the communication going. They eventually were able to overturn this lead and bring it back and win the map to 224 to 198, so about a 30-point win there. Formal was certainly the best player out of both teams in this game. He ended the game with about 49 kills, and this was with an SMG. Now Formal is, you know, renowned to be one of the best AR players, but using an SMG seems to be just as good, if not better, which is very surprising. In the second game, a Solar S&D was the map. Envy took this one 2-6, but Optic actually went up 2-0 and they lost 6 straight rounds. Now Optic are notoriously not the strongest S&D team, but you wouldn't expect them to lose 6 straight rounds being 2-0 up. You know, they just started losing rounds and they just couldn't bring it back. Envy just started to get on a roll and they just couldn't be stopped. The third map of the series was a Biolab Uplink. Now this was one of the most bizarre games I've seen in a very long time. It ended 9-10 to Envy. Envy started well. At the end of the first half, I believe they were 9-4 up or 8-4 up, so they had a pretty decent lead. Nothing completely dominant lead that Optic couldn't come back from. Optic started to get going, and the second half seems to be a common thing throughout this. They start to play well towards the latter half of the games. But then this happened.
He got it. They got 3 seconds though. Can Scump get it through? There goes the pass, and they got a 1 point. I think the pass actually went through the player and went in.
Yeah, Krim was too far in the goal.
So that was one of the craziest plays I think we've seen all year. So Optic, obviously down by 2 with only a matter of 5 seconds to go. Karma's in Envy's base. They have to go for the dunk. So Karma's then taken out. Scump picks up the ball. Krim is located right under the uplink. So Scump elects to pass the ball to Krim. So as Scump throws the ball to Krim jumps, but he jumps behind the uplink. Scump passes the ball, it goes through the uplink, and it only goes for a 1 point. So Optic could have taken that to overtime and possibly have won the map, but who knows. So then the next map was a drift hardpoint. I think everybody on the Optic team, bar Karma, had not played drift hardpoint because it was one of the new maps added to the rotation. So Optic really starting off with a disadvantage, you could say. Envy started off very well, and by the third hill they had amassed about a 50-point lead. Optic were not looking good at all. At this point Looney was the top slayer for Envy. He was having a really great game. But then Optic's luck kind of started to change. At the 6th hill, no one on Optic was positive. I think Krim was even, but that was about it. They then adjusted to their circumstances, and they amassed a 50-point advantage by the second to last hill. They started to slay, and they won the game by 248 points to 168. So a pretty convincing win, but it was only really the last 3 or 4 hard points that Optic started to really come together and play, as we saw in the first map as well. So both Scump and Looney were the highest slayers for both teams respectively. And then that brought us to the last map of the series, which was a recovery S&D. Again, it was a new map added to the rotation after it was taken out in Season 1. Again, this S&D was very give or take. It got down to the last 3 rounds. I believe it was 4-4, 5-4, and then Optic ended up taking it 6-5. Some notable plays was a 1v2 clutch by Scump in round 4. By round 7, Foreman and Octane were having terrible maps. I think Foreman was 1-6 and Octane was 1-4. Now the best players for me in this S&D certainly were JCap. He finished 13-7, the highest kills out of both teams. Krim for Optic finished 12-8, Scump 10-7, Looney 10-8. He had a great series altogether. Looney was brilliant, I thought. Yeah, so that was basically it. OG won the search 6-5 and ended up taking the series. Now this was by no means Optic's best performance, we can say that right now. Envy looked pretty strong though. I think it was a combination of Envy playing well and Optic just not really clicking together. They hadn't played for a couple of weeks. They were just a bit rusty, but they ended up taking it. There was just that little bit of extra quality that Optic had that Envy didn't. That really won them the series. Players I thought that really stood out was, for Envy, Looney, consistency. He was consistent throughout most of the maps, especially in that first hard point, the last S&D played really well. Octane, he had a great respawn game, his ball was brilliant. And Cap, just a leadership role. People weren't sure if he could step up and actually be that leader. He showed he could. For OG, Formal in the respawn, he showed he could do an SMG with an AR, didn't matter, he could still put up great numbers. Scump played okay, the drift hardpoint was probably his best map. Krim was just up and down, and then Karma had a pretty bad series. Obviously he is the OBJ player for the team, but he put up really poor numbers. Like, he can be slightly excused because of his role, but I still think that the numbers he put up just weren't good enough. He didn't have a great series altogether, and he just wasn't up to par. But I think, Optic, once they get a bit of practice, they'll be back to normal. They'll be back to what we're used to. So yeah, that wraps up the in-game or the in-depth analysis of Optic versus Envy. So finally, to end the show today, I have my predictions for tonight's League games. So to begin with, we have ON versus TK. Now I think this one's going to be pretty close. I'm going to go 3-2 in favour of TK. In the second game tonight, we have Epsilon taking on the newly formed Elevate. I think this Elevate roster is pretty strong, so I'm going to take 3-1 to Elevate. Third game, we have Denial versus Rise. I think this one is going to turn out to be 3-0 to Denial. Finally, in the last game tonight, we have Isolation Empire versus Optic Gaming. And again, I think it's going to be a 3-0 Optic Gaming. So that just about wraps up everything in this show today. I would just like to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.